The twin sons of Valkyria 9 were brutal Tide 1 gold, one blood orange and both hellbent on baking every poor soul wandering the dusty alleys of Scar's Reach. Dax Carter, human cargo hauler, part-time gambler, full-time walking disaster, staggered out of a cantina that smelled like fermented roots and regret. His yellow shirt clung to his back in patches, slick with sweat and something spicy he couldn't identify. His wallet was light, his ship was dry, and his stomach was growling. Louder than the engine that failed on him 2 days ago. He muttered, "Just one job. One plasma run. How did I end up sunburned, broke, and probably banned from 3 moons?" He stepped into the chaos of the market bazaar, a rickety sprawl of rusted stalls and shouting traders, hoping to find either fuel or food before heatstroke claimed him. Instead, he walked straight into royalty. She stood in the middle of the street like the universe owed her an apology. Tall, gleaming violet skin that shimmered under sunlight. Platinum blonde hair twisted into elaborate coils. A golden bikini top barely containing what looked less like fashion and more like sacred weapons. Matching bottoms, high-heeled armored boots that somehow didn't sink into the dust. Her eyes, glowing faint gold, locked onto Dax the moment he bumped into her. He stumbled back, hands raised. "Sorry, didn't see you there." She didn't blink. Instead, she pointed both hands toward her chest, no shame. No hesitation, fingers spread like she was presenting a holy relic. "You are to greet my melons, human," she said. "Not my hand. It is custom." Dax blinked. "You're what?" The market froze. Literally, traders paused. Drones halted mid-delivery. Even a robotic hawker stuttered into silence. Dax could feel the attention now, pressing down like gravity. The Fatha woman stepped forward, regal and unbothered. "You will greet them now, or insult the honor of House Irene." Dax's gaze flicked from her chest to her face, then to the mountain of a figure behind her, an armored male nearly 8 feet tall with the same violet skin, broad shoulders, and a permanent scowl that said he'd killed before breakfast. "Look, I didn't mean any disrespect," Dax stammered. "I just back on Earth, we usually start with a handshake before going full frontal." Her eyes narrowed. "They are not frontal. They are sacred glands of fertility. To greet them is to acknowledge our bond with life itself." Dax scratched the back of his neck. "You say sacred, but they're also really out there." "Do it," she said, "or be exiled from the trade quadrant." He panicked. And like every human man caught in a cross-species etiquette nightmare, he defaulted to the worst possible move. He offered his hand. Her mouth dropped open. The gasp she made wasn't one of offense. It was a war cry. "You touched my hand?" "My hand?" She stepped back as if he'd slapped her with an oil rag. "You dare defile me with such barbarism?" The market gasped in unison. The bodyguard shifted. His fists were the size of fruit crates. Okay. Misunderstanding." Dax threw his hands up. "Let's not go full galactic deathmatch over what I thought was a polite gesture." She turned to the gathering crowd, voice ringing out like a temple bell. "This outsider has violated the sacred rite of gland greeting. He must now undergo reparation through the trial of sincerity." "Wait, trial?" Dax said, stepping back, bumping into a stack of spice jars. "What kind of trial? Like trivia? Paperwork?" The giant behind her grunted something in a low, ominous tongue that Dax was fairly sure translated to dig his grave. The woman Vesca, though he didn't know her name yet, stepped up to him, her breath warm with some mix of alien spice and furious pride. Her voice dropped low, full of ceremonial gravity. "You will prove your sincerity, or you will be denied access to all future trade across the Irene systems." "I just wanted fuel," Dax mumbled. "And now," she whispered, her hand grabbing his collar, "you will earn it with honor." He was dragged off his feet, his boots scraping across the market road as Veska pulled him toward a structure woven from bone-colored fibers and draped in golden banners. Traders cleared a path, some watching with pity, others with excitement. As he was yanked through the shimmering threshold, Dax groaned, "I'm going to die. All because I didn't kiss the boobs." The air inside the ritual chamber was thick, almost alive. Dax Carter stumbled as Veska dragged him forward, her grip on his shirt like iron disguised in silk. The moment they crossed the woven threshold, the temperature dropped and a low hum vibrated through the solace of his boots. He glanced around bone-white walls curved inward like the ribs of some ancient beast, the ceiling a dome of translucent gold pulsing faintly with light. At the center was a raised platform of woven vines and glowing strands, surrounded by braziers that released curls of purple smoke with every hiss. "I'm starting to get the feeling this isn't just about handshakes," Dax muttered. Vesca turned sharply, her gold bikini catching the light like a blade. "This is the chamber of sincerity. Many have entered. Few have passed. Great. Love that. Real welcoming vibe," Dax said, trying to sound casual while calculating how fast he could sprint to the exit. Not fast enough. Her towering armored brother now blocked it. Veska circled him like a predator studying her prey. "Your actions offended the honor of House Irene. A greeting denied is a bond severed before it begins. Again, deeply sorry. I just didn't want to get arrested for interstellar indecency." Her eyes narrowed. "There is no indecency in respect. What you saw as anatomy, we see as sanctity." He sighed. "Look, where I come from, touching someone's chest is intimate." "It is," she said, stepping closer. "But intimacy without sincerity is corruption. And you must now prove you are not corrupted." Dax looked up at her, throat dry. "So what do I do? Kiss them with eye contact and a poem?" She didn't laugh. Instead, she raised a hand, and from the shadows, a robed attendant emerged, a smaller alien with pale green skin, no eyes, and floating orbs circling its head. It held a glowing bowl filled with shimmering blue oil. "You will anoint your lips with the salve of revelation," Veska said. "Then you will offer a single kiss upon my glands. It must be done slowly, without lust, without fear. Only reverence." "That's very specific." "If your heart lies, the oil will burn. If it is true, the chamber will respond." Dax eyed the oil like it might bite him. "So, let me get this straight. If I kiss you wrong, I get chemically punished?" Veska gave the faintest smile. "The oil does not punish, it reveals." "Even worse." He dipped a trembling finger into the bowl. It tingled, not hot, not cold, just aware, like it knew who he was, what he was. He rubbed it over his lips, and for a second, everything felt too quiet. Veska stepped forward. The gold fabric stretched across her chest shimmered with every breath she took. Her hands remained at her sides, her expression unreadable. She stood before him not as a seductress, not as an object of desire, but as a living symbol of her people. "Proceed," she said softly. Dax hesitated, heart thudding like war drums in his ears. He leaned forward, close enough to feel the heat of her skin. The scent hit him again, floral, electric, strange. His lips hovered above her chest, and he remembered something his mother once said: "Respect isn't always about understanding. Sometimes it's just about listening." He closed his eyes and pressed his lips gently against the center of her chest. The moment was soft, warm, surprisingly still. No fireworks, no alarms. Just the chamber exploded with golden light. The braziers flared. The orbs overhead spun into a vortex. The vines on the floor pulsed beneath his feet. He staggered back, gasping, lips tingling. Veska stared at him, her eyes wide, not with fury, Not even surprise. With something else. Something almost like hope. The chamber accepts your sincerity, she whispered. He was about to respond when the ground beneath the platform shifted with a deep rumble. A hidden door behind Vesca unsealed with a hiss, revealing a spiral staircase. Descending into darkness. Wait, what's that? Dax asked. Vesca turned, her expression solemn. The sincerity was only the beginning. Now comes the trial of heat. Oh, come on, Dax groaned. Wasn't that already hot enough? She descended the stairs without answering. Behind him, the armored brother stepped forward just one pace. Dax sighed, rubbed his face, and followed, because apparently kissing holy melons was just step one. The staircase spiraled down like the throat of a sleeping beast, stone steps warm underfoot, etched with glowing symbols that pulsed softly with each step Dax took. The air changed with every level, denser, thicker, hotter. His shirt clung. To him, sweat dripping down his spine. Behind him, the armored brother moved with silent menace, and ahead, Vesca descended with the grace of a woman who'd done this ritual 100 times. Maybe she had. Maybe the sincerity trial was only the polite appetizer before the gods of house. Irene got serious. The moment Dax's boots touched the floor of the lower chamber, the world shifted. Heat slammed into him like a wave. Not just hot, ancient, like the breath of a star. The walls glowed a deep amber, fluid and alive, like molten glass frozen mid-flow. At the center stood a circular platform surrounded by floating crystals, each one humming a different note, weaving a song into the space that vibrated in his bones. Vesca stood waiting. This time, she wore a long sheer robe over her golden attire, strands of woven light trailing behind her like comet tails. Her eyes shimmered brighter than before, and when she spoke, her voice was lower, slower charged. "Welcome to the Chamber of Heat," she said. "I was already sweating upstairs," Dax muttered, wiping his brow. "This feels like I walked into a sauna that hates me." "Heat," she said, ignoring the comment, "is not about discomfort. It is pressure. It reveals cracks, breaks falsehoods, unlocks truth." "And what, exactly, is going to break today?" he asked. "You," she said, stepping forward. "Or your hesitation." Vesca raised both arms, and the robe fell away like mist. The gold bikini remained, but it glowed now, genuinely glowing, as if feeding off the ambient energy. Her skin gleamed with sweat and something else. Something not human. Her whole body seemed to radiate a presence that filled the room. "You will stand there," she said, pointing to the platform center, "and endure." "Endure what? Me?" Dax stepped onto the platform, boots clicking on the polished surface. Immediately, it warmed under him, like a sun lamp focusing just beneath his feet. Vesca stepped up, circling slowly, the music of the crystals rising in tempo. She walked behind him, fingers brushing his spine, then his sides, then gone again. Her breath ghosted across his neck. "You must remain still," she whispered. "You may feel, you may want, but you may not touch, not speak, not act." "This sounds suspiciously like torture with extra steps," Dax said. Vesca appeared in front of him, closer than before. "It is," she said simply. "We test your control, not your strength. Your sincerity only begins when instinct surrenders to will." She stepped even closer, close enough that he could feel the fabric of her bikini graze his chest. Her fingers moved to the hem of his shirt and began to lift. Dax caught her eyes. "Is this part of the ritual?" "Yes," she said, "and no." "Well, that's not helpful. You will endure or you will fall." His shirt hit the floor, soaked and heavy. The heat rose instantly, beads of sweat forming along his collarbone. Vesca raised one hand and pressed it flat against his bare chest, not roughly, but with weight, with intent. He didn't move. COULDN single quotes T. The crystals around them pulsed faster. VESCA. Leaned in, her lips inches from his. She didn't kiss him. Didn't even brush them. Instead, she breathed in, slow smelling him, reading his body, his tension, his restraint. Your heart is frantic, she whispered. That's because I'm a human standing shirtless in front of a glowing alien woman in a lava lamp temple. She smiled. And then things escalated. VESCA began to circle him again, this time closer, this time slower. Her fingers ran lightly across his arms, his ribs, down to his waist, but never beneath. Her hips brushed his thigh as she passed behind him. Her chest pressed briefly against his back. His breath caught. Still, he didn't move. The heat grew. The air shimmered. The room seemed to pulse with the weight of restraint. You want to fail, she murmured, but you won't. Is that a compliment? It's a confession. Vesca stopped in front of him again, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. Her nails shimmered with the same gold as her armor. You're different, Dax Carter. Most humans flinch. Break, reach. You, wait. I'd love to say it's out of respect, he whispered, but honestly, I'm just terrified of what your brother might do if I sneeze wrong. A flicker of amusement crossed her face. Then endure a little longer, she said. And she stepped forward, fully, her body pressing into his, the heat of her radiating through both layers of cloth between them. Her lips brushed his ear. You're holding back desire, she said. Good. Now hold back everything else. The crystals spun into a whirlwind. Heat built to a crescendo. Dax felt his knees weaken, his breath come shallow, every nerve screaming. For release. But he held. He did not move. And then, suddenly, silence. The room cooled in an instant. The light dimmed. The pressure fell away like a lifted weight. Vesca stepped back. Her eyes, glowing more than ever, locked onto his. You pass. Dax exhaled hard, hands shaking, body trembling. Thank all the moons. Vesca tilted her head. Do not thank them yet, a sharp click echoed behind him. He turned and nearly fell off the platform. A second woman had entered the chamber, identical. Same violet skin, same golden bikini, same glowing eyes, but her expression? Colder, sharper, and very, very angry. You started the trial, she snapped, without me. Dax stared at Vesca. What is happening? Vesca sighed. This is Zilla, my twin. You knew I returned from the Temple Moon today, Zilla growled. You knew I was promised first claim. Dax blinked. First what now? Zilla's eyes locked on him. He will undergo my trial, or all of this is void. Vesca said nothing. Dax, still shirtless, soaked in sweat and half sure he was hallucinating, just mumbled, I really should have just stayed hungry. Zilla moved like a storm wrapped in silk. Her boots echoed against the molten glass floor, each step slower than it needed to be, yet heavier, more deliberate. Dax stood frozen on the center platform, heat still pulsing through his bones from Vesca's trial. The air hadn't cooled. If anything, it had thickened, charged with something darker. Vesca stood to the side now, watching her twin with a face carved from practiced calm, but her fingers twitched at her sides. Something unsaid burned. Between them, Zilla stopped a few feet from Dax and tilted her head slowly. She looked just like Vesca, and yet not. Her skin glowed with the same royal violet shimmer. Her hair braided down her spine like a ceremonial blade, but her presence was colder, clinical. Her eyes scanned him like a specimen. You've endured. My sister's heat, she said, but heat is fleeting. Fire can be faked. Sincerity can be performed. Dax exhaled. Please tell me this one's just a written quiz. She ignored him and raised her hand. A deep chime rang out from somewhere above. The golden braziers lining the chamber hissed, and vents in the walls released spirals of shimmering smoke silver this time, not purple. It filled the room slowly, making the air metallic and sharp, and suddenly the platform Dax stood on began to rise. Not much, maybe 6 inches. But it didn't feel like elevation. It felt like judgment. "This is the trial of stillness," Zila said. "The trial that breaks most." "And what's a test exactly?" Dax asked, voice dry. Zila stepped forward, her hand trailing across a nearby brazier, sparks dancing along her fingertips. "Restraint," she said softly, "not just of body, of instinct, of soul." Veska turned her head sharply. "Zila, don't. He was not bound yet," Zila cut in. "The bond is not sacred unless both vessels approve." "I didn't." "No, this was a 2-for-1 marriage deal," Dax muttered. "Really should have read the fine print." Zila's eyes narrowed. "You touched her with sincerity. Now you must withstand me without touching at all." She stepped onto the platform. Dax's breath caught. There was something electric about her. The way she moved, the control, the silence between every motion. If Veska had been fire, Zila was ice sharpened into a needlepoint. Zila stopped just in front of him. "You are not to speak," she whispered. "You are not to move. Not unless I say. If you do, the ritual bond breaks." Dax opened his mouth to argue, but her finger pressed gently to his lips. No words, only breath. He nodded. And then she began. Zila didn't tease. She assessed. Her hands didn't roam, they measured. Her fingers touched his jaw, his collarbone, his chest, not with lust, but with ritual precision, like she was reading Braille beneath his skin. Her mouth followed, brushing the edge of his throat, then down to his shoulder. Her lips were cool, dry, and calculated. Dax's hands twitched at his sides. His jaw clenched. She pressed her body lightly to his, her curves a mirror of Veska's. But her intent utterly different. Not warmth. Not affection. Claiming. "Your heart pounds," she whispered against his ear. "Your body betrays you, but you hold." Her breath hitched ever so slightly as her hips shifted forward, letting the sheer cloth of her robe graze across the front of his pants. He almost groaned, but bit it back. Her mouth ghosted across his cheek. "You ache." He said nothing. "Good." She whispered. And then she bit him. Not hard, but sharp enough. Her teeth grazed the edge of his shoulder, just above the collarbone, and the pain flared just enough to confuse the tension building in his body. He shuddered, knees nearly buckling. The smoke coiled tighter around them, forming a mist barrier that blurred the rest of the chamber from view. She pulled back. Her breath quickened for the first time. "You haven't moved." Dax opened his mouth to respond, remembered, shut it again. She smiled, cruel and elegant. "Then we continue." She knelt, slowly, deliberately, one leg, then the other, her thighs. Pressing against his legs, her hands on his hips. Her lips trailed down his chest, lower, lower, until he swore the floor itself tilted beneath him. The room was spinning, or maybe it was just the weight of willpower threatening to snap like a frayed wire. And then silence. Zila stood. He hadn't moved. Her voice, when she spoke again, was not cold. "You pass." Dax collapsed to his knees, gasping like someone who just survived a spacewalk with no suit. Veska stepped forward slowly, watching him like he was something new, now something not just unexpected, but impossible. He passed both trials, she said. Zila nodded, stepping beside her twin. For the first time, the two touched, palms pressed, fingers laced. "He is worthy," Zila said, "but now we show him the truth." The platform lowered, the mists cleared, and from the far wall a great golden arch began to glow. A third figure entered. The brother. His black and gold armor shone with heat, and for the first time he spoke. "You have passed the trials of the sacred line," he said. His voice was deep, final. "Now comes the binding." Dax looked between the sisters. Both stared at him not with desire but reverence. "You came for fuel," Zila said. "You leave," Veska added, "as consort to the heirs of House Irene." His mouth opened again. "Do I at least get lunch first?" The brother drew his ceremonial blade. Veska smiled. "You'll feast when you finished your final trial." Dax blinked. "Wait, there's another trial?" Zila leaned close, lips against his neck. "Yes," she whispered. "The trial of closeness." Dax looked skyward. "I regret everything." The chamber beyond the golden arch wasn't built for comfort. It pulsed with a low, throbbing hum, like a sleeping god stirring beneath the floor. The walls were dark, alive, patterned with veins of molten gold that pulsed in time with Dax's heartbeat, or maybe in spite of it. Whatever was waiting beyond this point, it wasn't ritual. It was revelation. Veska and Zila flanked him now, each one silent, glowing, regal in their terrifying symmetry. The ceremonial brazier flames behind them burned white, no longer warm. But scorching like truth had replaced tradition. The brother said nothing more. He simply bowed once, placed the obsidian-handled blade into a hovering shrine, and turned his back. He would not witness what came next. "You are now between names," Veska said, her voice hushed. "You are no longer outsider, but not yet bondmate." Zila's voice followed, colder, tighter. "And what exists between names must be tested, stripped, made real." "I just wanted fuel," Dax whispered, but no one responded. The three stepped into the arch. The space inside was unlike anything he'd seen, not a room, but a vast field of nothing, suspended by geometry and light. Hexagonal tiles floated beneath their feet, forming steps only as they moved. Darkness surrounded everything, but above, a spiraling array of golden sigils spun slowly like a planetary system. As they walked, walls formed and dissolved in patterns around them, as if the chamber itself was choosing what Dax should see. A memory flashed across one wall, his own ship, the Jenny Flyer, drifting alone in the black. Another wall flickered and showed his father's angry face, yelling during one of their last transmissions. His palms began to sweat. "This place reads you," Veska said softly. "It watches your truth and reveals your fractures." Zila added, "Well, I'm full of those," Dax muttered. "Might want to expand the walls." Veska stopped and turned to him. "The trial of closeness begins now." The platform beneath them expanded into a golden disk hovering above a bottomless drop. In its center was a pedestal bearing a silver band slim, engraved with the marks of House Irene, softly vibrating. "You must wear the bond circlet," Zila said, "and then you will be joined." Dax frowned. "Joined? Like spiritually?" "Emotionally?" Veska raised a brow. "Biologically." Zila stepped close. "You've passed the trials of control. But now we must test alignment. Your energy, your blood, your will. And if it doesn't align, then it consumes you," Veska answered, "and we are released." "Perfect," Dax said. "Just how I dreamed this week going." Still, he stepped forward, not because he wanted to, but because something in the back of his mind, something ancient and frightened and curious, demanded he know how this ended. He picked up the circlet. It felt cold, impossibly heavy for something so small. He slipped it onto his wrist. The chamber responded instantly. Light burst out from the circlet, slamming into the ground around him. A pulse rocketed outward, shattering the floating tiles and sending Veska and Zila to their knees. Dax remained standing, frozen, his eyes wide. The golden sigils above now spun faster, locking into place. One by one, they connected into a perfect circle, then descended. What's happening? He shouted. Neither sister answered. Their bodies shimmered, trembling not with fear, but with force. The sigil ring passed through Dax like a shockwave. Images poured into his mind. Not his own. Their memories. Vesca single quotes S first breath inside. A crystal birthing pool. Zila single quotes S hand gripping a sword larger than her body at age 10. Their mother's funeral. Her casket sealed in starlight. The failed war. The fall of the bloodline. The loneliness. Then need. The need for legacy. His knees buckled. He hit the floor. Vesca crawled to him, eyes filled with silver tears. You see us now, she said. No longer tradition. No longer trial. Just two daughters. Asking not to be forgotten. Zila pressed her forehead to his. Will you carry us forward, Dax Carter? Not for culture, for us. His breath trembled. The circlet burned hotter. Then calmed. The light dimmed. The chamber exhaled. And the platform steadied. The circlet on Dax's wrist transformed, twisting, expanding, becoming a twin-link bracelet glowing with violet energy. One strand led to Vesca's wrist. The other to Zila's. They were bound. Not by duty. But by choice. Dax looked up, trembling. Is that it? Did we just... Vesca leaned down. You passed the trial of closeness. Zila smiled faintly. And now you pass into belonging. The platform lowered, taking them back to the chamber where it all began. Golden petals fell from the ceiling like gentle ash. The brother waited, sword across his chest, head bowed. Musicians had appeared from somewhere, playing a slow, haunting melody on wind flutes made of crystal. Dax stood between the sisters. Shirtless, dirty, completely changed. Vesca kissed his cheek. Zila whispered, Ready? For what? Dax asked. They took his hands. For the final trial, they said in unison. Of course, he groaned. There's always another trial. The final trial didn't begin with fire or drums or declarations. It began with silence, not the peaceful kind, the weighted kind. The kind that fills a room like smoke before a collapse. Dax Carter stood flanked by Vesca and Zila, both now. Adorned in ceremonial armor, not the gold bikinis of before, but black and violet plates inscribed with house sigils, their skin glowing faintly beneath. They looked less like lovers now, and more like rulers preparing for something ancient. Dangerous and binding. Above them, the stars had returned, projected across the ceiling dome of the sacred hall, spiraling in real time through the constellations of the Irene quadrant. The audience chamber was empty of citizens. No guards, no council. Only him, the sisters, and the silent presence of their brother in full battle plate, standing at the far end of the platform with the ceremonial blade once more in his grasp. Why does it feel like we're not celebrating? Dax said, voice low, cracking the stillness. Vesca turned to him. Her expression was unreadable, because celebration comes after survival. You passed the trials of sincerity, heat, and closeness, Zila added, her tone sharper. But they were only individual trials. The final test is not about you. It is about what we are. When joined, Dax blinked. You mean like relationship chemistry? No, Vesca said. We mean literal chemistry, spirit, nerve, will, heart. Zela stepped forward and pointed to the twin cuffs glowing on all three of their wrists, the bond circlets. When the final trial begins, these will lock. Your energy will become. Ours will pour into you. If the bond holds, we become one, royal, unbreakable. And if it doesn't? Vesca's silence was the answer. Zila filled it. Then all three of us die. Dax's blood ran cold. So this is like relationship. Therapy with death as the consequence. Neither laughed. A shimmering glyph circle lit beneath them, and the air began to shift. The light bent around the room like someone twisting the fabric of reality. From the ceiling, a single beam of white light descended, slow and deliberate, until it touched the platform and ignited the trial sigil, a complex interwoven symbol. That spun like a living thing. "Stand in the center," Veska said. Dax obeyed. The sisters followed. All three stood within the pattern. The brother stepped forward. Without speaking, he raised the blade, sliced it horizontally across his palm, then touched the hilt to the floor. The light exploded. Dax screamed, but not from pain, from invasion. Everything rushed into him. Veska's rage at watching her mother die of stardust fever. Zyla single quotes as fear the night she killed her first assassin. Memories of war, loss, love, ancient dances, political betrayals. The sound of Veska's heartbeat when she was 13 and alone. The quiet way Zila covered her twin with her own armor when the bomb fell on the temple. Steps. And just beneath all of it, longing. They wanted a partner, not a figurehead. Not a puppet, not a perfect male to parade. They wanted someone to see them, to hold the fire and not be burned, to answer them without trembling. And Dax, broken, sarcastic, completely average Dax dash held. The trial circle glowed red, then gold, then white. His knees buckled, but Veska caught his right arm. Zila, his left. The cuffs on their wrists fused into a single golden band across all three bodies, locking with a pulse that echoed through the stone. The glyph exploded upward in a column of light that punched through the ceiling and up into the night sky. Outside, across the domes of Valkyria, 9 towers lit up in response, temples ringing gongs, towers glowing with legacy runes. The system had seen the signal. The bloodline had bonded. In the chamber, the light dimmed. The trial seal faded. The brother stepped forward again and spoke, his voice thundering. "The bond is forged." Veska fell to her knees, exhausted, sweat clinging to her skin like silver dew. Zila dropped beside her, chest heaving. Dax stood alone for a moment longer, glowing from the inside out, blinking into the emptiness. "Is it over?" he asked. Vesc and nodded weakly. "You did not break." Zila smiled faintly. "We didn't either." Dax collapsed onto the floor beside them. "So, what happens now?" Veska turned her head toward him, the barest hint of a smirk touching her lips. "Now you rest. For how long? Until the coronation." Dax froze. "Wait, what coronation?" Zila leaned in. "Your consort to 2 heirs of the Irene throne. You're about to be introduced to the galaxies as a mate and a leader." "Oh hell," Dax whispered. "I'm going to have to give a speech." "Aren't I?" "Many," Veska whispered, already drifting into sleep. Zilla grinned. "And wear silks." Dax stared at the dome above, blinking slowly, his heart finally slowing. He'd passed every test, survived every trial, but public speaking? That was going to be the real nightmare. The coronation took place beneath 3 moons and 1,000 drones. Scars Reach, a dusty, lawless outpost just days ago, had transformed overnight. Glowing banners of House Irene stretched between towers. Drones buzzed through the air, broadcasting ceremonial music. Alien spectators, traitors, off-world nobles, smugglers, and sworn enemies alike gathered in the amphitheater carved from the bones of a leviathan that once ruled Valkyria's seas. Dax Carter stood at the center of it, all draped in ceremonial silk that felt suspiciously like a bedsheet someone had embroidered with stars. On either side of him stood Veska and Zilla, armored again, radiant, untouchable. They looked like destiny sculpted into flesh. Dax looked like someone who accidentally wandered into a space opera mid-scene. His heart pounded beneath the ornate chestplate they'd strapped to him. It wasn't fear anymore. It was weight. The weight of meaning. of legacy, of choice. This still feels like a prank. Dax whispered. A prank doesn't survive 3 sacred trials. Veska said. A prank doesn't rewire a bloodline. Zila added. He looked down at the cuffs now glowing with a steady, gentle light. The bond held. Still, even now, even under pressure. Maybe especially under pressure. An ancient priestess stepped forward, robes trailing behind her like memory. She spoke in the dialect of the stars, every word echoing through the amphitheater like a law written in sound. Symbols lit beneath their feet with each sentence. Dax didn't understand half of it, but he understood what came next. The consort. We'll speak, the priestess said, turning to him. The crowd waited. Vesca gave him a sideways look. Now would be a good time not to faint, Zila offered, or vomit. He stepped forward, cleared his throat, and held up his hands. No microphone, just his voice. A high. Murmurs rippled. I know what you're thinking. I don't look like much, and you're right. I'm a guy who showed up on this planet looking for fuel and tacos. Instead, I got trials, twins, and one very aggressive bracelet. Some laughter. Not much. But here's what I've learned. Traditions aren't about being ancient. They're about being remembered. And you can't remember something unless it means something. Sincerity, heat, closeness, stillness. Those aren't just tests. They're how you survive with someone. How you stand beside them when it's easier to walk away. He paused. These 2 women know. Warriors chose me. And somehow I chose them back. Not because it made sense, but because it felt. And sometimes, in a galaxy built on logic and law, feeling is the only thing that still surprises us. Silence. Then a slow rise. Of sound. Claps, cheers, reverent hums. Battle chants from alien houses Dax had never heard of. The amphitheater came alive. The priestess raised both hands. By the trials of flesh and flame, by the bond of nerve and blood, by the will of the stars, let this be known. Dax Carter, of Earth is consort prime of House Irene. Let it be recorded. Let it be remembered. Veska stepped to his right, eyes locked on him with something deeper than affection. Zila moved to his left, more composed but equally bright. Both reached out. Both kissed him on the cheek, opposite sides, same moment. The bond pulsed. And just like that he was theirs. And they were his. Later that night, back in the sacred chambers. Dax lay on a silken bench, finally out of the robes. Finally breathing like a normal human again. Veska straddled the edge of the pool, her feet kicking water lazily. Zila sharpened a blade nearby with almost meditative focus. So, Dax said, watching the stars outside the open skylight. Now what? Now, Veska said, we teach you court politics. And galactic law, Zila added. Oh good, Dax groaned. So death was the easy part, Veska smirked. You'll adapt. You already have, Zila added. He turned to look at them both. You know, he said, I came here broken. Orbiting 100 failures. Thinking my story was just one. Long crash. Veska moved to his side, her hand resting over his heart. And now? Dax smiled. Now I feel like I finally landed. They sat in silence. Not the heavy kind, the right kind. Somewhere far above, the bond shimmered. 3 lights. Woven into one. Not because tradition demanded it, but because fate had finally found its fools brave enough to try.